Welcome to the Macaw Podcast universe. I'm Jordan.
I put Jordan on the spot because I usually come in so hot. But yes,
and
welcome.
I have to warm up.
Oh, okay. This is the podcast where we exist to prove people wrong when they say that sequels are never better than the originals. And we're the day before Halloween today, and we've been doing a frightening series, quite the scary series, Insidious, started by James Wan and Leigh Whannell. And we're on the third entry. We're going to be closing it out next week. Some would dare say that the first week of November is almost as scary as the last month.
The series is just too spooky. It has residual spookies.
Yes, exactly. And
bleeds over into the next month.
Or maybe it has like motor oil footsteps.
Whatever that was.
Yeah, for some reason I kind of fixated on that, and I was like, they're definitely going to explain that black goo on his feet. And that's okay. They don't have to, but I just thought that they were going to. Because the previous movie, Insidious Chapter 2, was very into the details. And so was this one. I just thought that
Not as much, I would say.
A little less, yeah, sure. But yeah, we're talking about Insidious Chapter 3. This was both of our first time watching it.
See.
We don't have a sponsorship with them, but we're ready anytime. It was a YouTube rental, $3.99. We were able to just cast it straight onto the TV, and every time I do that, I feel like I'm living in the future, and it's so fun for me.
Yeah.
Because I felt like there was a time where either my TV or my phone did not have that capability. So, every time I cast to the TV, I am like, this is unbelievable.
It's allowed
I can't
to be
believe
exciting
it.
still.
The movie's written and directed by Leigh Whannell. Well, maybe we should follow up on Leigh Whannell right now.
Oh, yeah, because last time we said that we were going to watch The Invisible Man that night.
Yes.
We did. We delivered on that promise. And now, having watched this movie, we have seen all of Leigh Whannell's filmography as a director.
Yes.
And wow, can't wait to see more from this dude. Everyone thought that with Upgrade.
Yeah.
Duh. But it only continues to feel that way.
Yeah, I think he is kind of doing something special out there.
He is. It's just that I had this thought when we were watching The Invisible Man, which Seth did not have to tweet that he was wrong because we loved it.
Yeah,
and it was
true.
An amazing movie.
Yeah. The more I think about it, the more I'm like, maybe it is my favorite 2020. I don't know. I think Palm Springs is still taking it, and maybe Relic.
I'm surprised by that, but whatever.
Palm Springs hit like on every note for me.
It's really, really good. I'm not saying it's not good or anything.
Yeah.
But what was I gonna say? It's just watching that movie and just thinking about him as a director, and he's written so much before he directed something.
Yeah.
So he's mostly known as a writer. That's mostly how he's been paid in the film industry. Right. But now that he's been able to direct, it's very exciting. You get to see his full vision because when you're a writer, it's the director's job to envision what you wrote, and a lot of the times, like that's just it probably is never quite what the screenwriter anticipated, whether that's good or bad. So it is. I just was thinking about, sometimes I just feel like people who are able to write and direct sort of feels like they have a leg up. And I know I'm not making that as a sweeping statement, because there are so many amazing directors today who do not write their movies. So you don't need to do that. To be a great director. But his movies, the three of them that exist are just like so unique to him. Like it's like, that's not that many movies, and it's already like, that's a Leigh Whannell movie.
Yeah, that is already how it feels. And he took to a little sidebar on Invisible Man, that was supposed to be this like part of the dark universe that Universal tried to kick off in, I think, 2016 or 17 with The Mummy. And that movie did so bad that they scrapped all their plans. They had all these movies lined up. Like, there was going to be an Invisible Man movie starring Johnny Depp as the Invisible Man. That's the worst idea I've ever heard.
An insanely different movie.
Javier Bardem as Wolfman in a future Wolfman movie.
I see it, but maybe that's because Benicio did it.
Yeah. But anyway, so they were going to do this whole thing, and then it failed, and then Jason Blum was like, hey, I got an idea. I know a guy. And previous to that, I think he also produced Upgrade, Jason Blum.
Cool.
I think. So he's worked with Leigh for a while now.
He knows the guy.
Yeah, and so then Leigh writes The Invisible Man as well and directs it. So all three of his movies are sole writer and director credit. And the guy's great. He is so great. I love him.
Do you know what the original Invisible Man, what it is? Because I don't.
It's an H.G. Wells novel.
Yeah, I know, but like, did a guy accidentally create something that made him invisible?
Oh, I really don't know.
Because I just, watching this new one, it's like the theme is so clear. And I know that that's not what the story is about.
No, I think the other book's more about like someone, like I think it's like
just a sci-fi thriller of a different vein.
Yeah, like a guy, makes like a serum and now he can go invisible, and that's the whole thing. But this whole story was about like abuse in a relationship and like male dominance and like a woman finding her strength and stuff like that. It was so good.
Crazy.
And yeah, so big recommend if you have not seen it. It's really good. And I love another cool thing, especially after watching Insidious now, is it's like Insidious is a horror movie. Upgrade is an action movie with some horror elements. And I feel like
it's a thriller. Yeah. It's a sci-fi thriller.
And in Invisible Man, I feel like he was able to take both of those lessons he learned and like perfectly combine them.
Yep, he added a psychological element to it.
Yeah. Although I do like Upgrade more.
Yeah.
But Upgrade was kind of like, it's sort of unlike anything else I've seen in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
you can't not, let me start over. You're always going to love a sci-fi movie that doesn't feel the need to explain the sci-fi part.
Yeah.
And The Invisible Man does the same thing. And they don't explain it, but you understand how it works.
Right.
And that is when sci-fi is at its strongest.
Well, and yes, I agree with you. And talk about Upgrade. I know they have like plans for a TV show. I don't know what that's going to look like. But if I had a podcast that was movies that I want sequels from, that would be the first one that I would do.
Yeah.
Because the movie ends, and skip ahead, listener, if you haven't seen it. But doesn't the movie end with like he is stuck in his brain?
Yep.
And he doesn't know what's real anymore?
Yep.
And for me, like I was like, this is a great ending, but it's a perfect tee up for like the next movie. He's just like doing his thing, and then he's finding like glitches in his brain, and he fights his way out of his brain.
You know what that reminds me of?
So cool.
Is John Wick for some reason.
Yeah.
Because John Wick 1 ends with. How does that one end?
It just ends with him getting the new dog, the pit bull, and he defeated the guy in the rainy docks.
Oh, okay. Because I couldn't quite remember, but you know how like 2 ends.
Oh, where he's
and
like
you're
running
like,
all the assassins.
I know what the third movie's gonna be about.
Yeah,
that's always cool. It's like if they did another one, I know what it's about.
Yeah. So yeah, we love the guy and keep making movies. So this has basically like a very similar team. I already covered the director and writer. Music is Joseph Bashara again. And then the cinematography, this guy is new to the series, Brian Pearson, who did, of course, as we all know, Step Up, All In, Final Destination 5, My Bloody Valentine, and he's done a lot of TV recently. He did like an Apple Plus TV show
cool.
that stars Jason Momoa about not having vision or something like that.
So he's blind.
But it's like a world without vision. And then I think he can see. It's called See.
That sounds like a cool premise.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
So why did James Wan not direct this movie? What was he working on?
I don't know what he was working on. I have very few notes on this movie. It was just one of those like, yeah, Jason Blum was like, are we ready to make another one? And they're like, yeah. And then James Wan said, yeah, Leigh should do this one. There
this movie came out in 2015.
So he would have been working on Furious 7.
That is a pretty big project.
Yeah, which I believe is the movie that people argue is the best Fast and Furious movie.
Really?
I think people say that one or the fifth one usually when they're talking about it. So makes sense. We like James Wan a lot now. So whenever we get to Fast and Furious, I imagine we will at least like that movie.
Yeah.
Jordan's staring blank-faced at me. So the movie comes out June 5th, 2015. The budget of this one is $11 million.
That's too big.
It's a 29-day shoot. Domestically, it makes $52 million. Worldwide, it makes $112.9 million.
Still makes a ton of money.
So it makes a little bit less than the second movie, but more than the first movie.
It makes more than the first movie?
Mm-hmm. First one was around 99.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I got on notes.
Great.
I wish I had more, but I looked around and couldn't find much.
I mean, like we've talked about, this series is popular, but it's not that popular yet.
Right.
If that makes sense? So,
yeah.
I don't think there is much to find.
Right. There's not like on this scene, there's all this trivia about like this person did this thing. Or it's just like,
also, I mean,
good production.
It must not have been a bad production. Okay. So, Dermot Mulroney, that's a Hollywood name, plays the dad, Sean Brenner. He is in My Best Friend's Wedding, The Wedding Date, Young Guns, Hannah, the show. But I gotta see.
He's in something else.
I think it's older stuff that he's in.
I mean, I recognize the guy, but I don't know what. I couldn't say like he's from this.
It is quite possible that he is just in a lot, and you have just seen him in a lot. He reminded me, and I know it's not the same guy, but he reminded me of in Scott Pilgrim. Oh, he's in Friends. Well, we wouldn't know that.
Right.
But he's in 3 episodes, so he must have a boyfriend character arc. But he reminded me in Scott Pilgrim, the vegan guys. He reminded me as one of the vegan guys.
Oh, the vegan police, like
police.
with Tom Jane?
Yeah. But I know it wasn't him.
Yeah.
He's in, so The Wedding Date, Must Love Dogs, The Family Stone, Dante's Inferno. He's in Zodiac. That's what we probably know him from.
Yeah.
Captain Marty Lee.
Oh no. Okay, Captain Martin Lee.
So he's a police officer.
Okay.
I don't know what, because he's definitely not Mark Ruffalo and the other guy. So he's probably the next one. And then he's in Burn After Reading too. He's the star of Coming Up Daisy.
Right. The movie they see in the theaters.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
That's funny.
I feel like he also has a successful run in some TV show.
He's in J. Edgar, Abduction. He's in The Gray.
Oh, okay.
He's just in everything.
Yeah, okay.
He's in Everyman.
So what did you think about his performance? I'm very curious.
He was kind of distracting for me because of what we just said. Like, he is in everything. Uh-huh. So most of the movie, I'm just like, I can't wait to look up what this guy's in. Right. And then you just know in the back of your mind that when you go to look up what he's in, you're going to have a hard time trying to figure out what he's in because he's in everything.
Right.
That's what I thought of his performance. I thought he was good. I think that in a weird way, he's like too put together to be a single dad to me. Yeah. I think they could have casted a little bit better in that way, but he didn't do a bad job.
Yeah, I felt like he came together for me when he was like believing his daughter. From then on, I was into him. But before, I was kind of like, what is going on with this guy?
He also seemed a little too young to be, and this is probably just personal preference, but like too young looking to be the dad of kids that age.
Yeah.
To me. But I don't think like that's fair. I think that's just nitpicking.
He was in the right zone for me, but it was like all those scenes at the beginning where she's like, hey, Dad, what's up? And he's like, what's quinoa? You're a blogger? Don't take pictures of food. That's stupid. Everybody thinks you're nerdy. I was kind of like, ooh, woof.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's part of the Act 1 cheesy writing.
Right. I felt like that was like the weakest thing. And it was so like even in 2015, I feel like making a joke about quinoa is like 5 years too old.
But that's to show how out of touch he is with everything.
I know, but
also there's not a lot of time spent on it. His character is meant to believe his daughter at some point. That's really it. So it's not like he wasn't written to be a layered person. He just needed to not believe at one point and then to believe, because it wasn't even written. the wife died a year and a half ago. Obviously, all of them are struggling with it, but it was not written that it was shown that. Yeah. And maybe it could have been a little bit more, but also I think that was just
like where they left that. But
I think that's just a choice Leigh made where it's like, I don't want to spend that much time on it.
Right.
That's gonna be the big hook at the end.
Yeah.
So let's not think about it right now. That's how I feel.
I just think his acting and the writing in the first act for him were just like so out of date.
Yeah, I felt that like too.
It was so weird. But again, when he started believing her and like stuff, then I felt like he really shined in that moment where she says, you don't even care about mom or whatever, and he's like, oh, I see her every day. Yeah,
that was a good scene.
Then I was like, okay, I'm on board with this guy.
Yeah.
But I remember at first when he showed up, I was like, oh, and I couldn't remember why, but I was like, oh, I love this guy. And then like 2 minutes later, I was like, oh, maybe I spoke too soon on that. But then by the end of the movie, I liked it.
And it's probably because everyone recognizes him to some level. He just reminds me of the 90s and early 2000s.
Yeah. He does.
So
I
have a feeling
haircut
associated to that.
Yeah.
And I think that his hair didn't make sense, but that is like really zeroing in on things. So Quinn Brenner, the daughter, is played by Stephanie Scott. She is in Beautiful Boy.
Oh, okay, cool.
Oh, don't act like you're impressed. We haven't seen that movie.
No, I know, but I mean that was like it was like an okay critically acclaimed movie, so that's good for her.
I still need to watch it. Good Girls Get High.
oh yeah.
Wreck-It Ralph, Mary, Spare Room, At First Light.
Okay.
IT. So she isn't a lot, but I think she's still coming up.
Yes.
She's also in Law and Order. She's probably someone's daughter.
Right.
In Law and Order.
Or a murderer. What is her name again?
Stephanie Scott.
Stephanie Scott. I thought she was wonderful in this movie.
Unreal. We'll wait until we start talking about the movie.
Are you sure?
Because we're almost there.
Okay.
Because there's really no one else to talk about. I mean, I could talk about her friend, Haley Kiyoko, who was in Gem and The Holograms, which is also what Stephanie Scott was in.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Frank.
Oh, but was she Frank?
No. I thought for a split second it was that Mel Gibson movie with the beaver.
Oh, the beaver?
Puppet. Is that what it's called? The beaver?
Yeah, it's called the beaver.
I just clicked on it and this guy looked like Mel Gibson for a second. Like an old Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Jordan, you brought up Mel Gibson. Shane sent me this video. Shout out to Shane. And it is a real movie that is coming out. It's real. And it is called it's called like Kill Santa or something like that. It stars Walton Goggins and Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson is Santa. And a kid gets coal for Christmas, and he's like a billionaire kid, and he hires an assassin, Walton Goggins, to go kill Santa Claus.
Okay, is this a kid's movie?
No, it's like an R movie. It's going to be like an action, violent, like R-rated movie.
Not self-aware?
Well, I think it is.
Because if that was a kid's movie, count me in.
Well, it's kind of, for lack of a better term, it's like an edgelordy kind of thing. Like a Rick and Morty kind of a sketch where it's like, this is cool because it's like, we're killing Santa in this movie.
So it is self-aware.
It is, but not in the way that I like things to be self-aware.
I don't even know what to make of it.
Having said that, it could have looked worse.
I need to see pictures weird. And probably the trailer.
Yes, it's very weird that they're still hiring Mel Gibson to do stuff. That's more what's confusing me.
Yeah.
I'll look it up. Did you have any more?
I did, because I did realize who this person was. So Phyllis Applegate, who plays Grace, which is the elderly woman in the wheelchair that dies. Mm-hmm. She's in Better Call Saul.
The poster for this.
Did you hear that? She's in Better Call Saul.
Which
the old lady who dies in the wheelchair.
Okay,
she's in the retirement home. Her. Yeah, she seems familiar. So she is in Better Call Saul in the retirement home. And then Michael Reed McKay plays the man who can't breathe.
Oh, cool.
He's also in X-Men 2, Batman and Robin.
Who is he in both of those?
So in X-Men 2, he's Jason 143.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Batman and Robin, Antonio Diego something.
Okay.
He's also in The Monster Squad. He's in CSI.
I'm just going to scoot this over to you.
And The Shield.
You can look at the poster for Fat Man.
Oh, is that what it's called?
Yes. So that's it. It's a very snowy looking, low opacity Mel Gibson staring out into a snow field with a man with a rifle standing above a body, I believe. And it says, "'Tis the season to get even." Is the tagline.
But it's a comedy, right?
Well, yeah, it's like a comedy action movie. Yeah.
You know what? I'm into it.
Okay. Well, yeah.
I mean, it's a funny premise.
It is a funny premise. Yeah.
I think you saying, why do people keep hiring Mel Gibson? I think that is proof that no one's hiring Mel Gibson. So that might be answer to your question.
Yes. I was shocked that Walton Goggins was in it, though. Although
Are you kidding? That guy is in so much stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, because he's in a Quentin Tarantino movie doesn't mean that he's going to be weird. Honestly,
it's like I unopened up a can of
like
worms
him. He's a really good actor.
Yeah.
But anyone who looks at him is thinking of, oh, Jim Carrey didn't get the role. That's how he feels to me.
What? No.
Really?
I don't feel that at all.
He seems a lot like Jim Carrey to me.
I mean, he kind of looks like him, but none of his mannerisms or like the roles he chooses make sense to me as a Carrey role.
Well,
because
that's what I always associate it with.
They're more like very evil Southern people usually.
Because
kind
of
the idea.
Django Unchained.
And Ant-Man and the Wasp. And Lincoln. And this movie. I mean, that's kind of his thing, it seems like. But I guess that makes sense why he would
just don't be disappointed that he's not doing better stuff, because I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And I guess he's been on like a lot of TV shows and stuff. I guess he's probably someone who likes to work. And that's not a bad thing. Okay. All right.
We just fought.
I think we did.
About Jim
think
Carrey.
We did. Yeah.
I mean, do you think you could do a better Joe Biden impression than Jim Carrey?
Maybe. I went into that expecting it to be bad, and it did turn out to be an okay impression, right?
I didn't watch a lot of it.
I think it actually was pretty decent. I don't think I really get SNL anymore. It's just the world is too crazy, so SNL isn't that funny to me, because it's like, yeah, the debate was way crazier than this skit about the debate.
Yeah.
The real debate.
Yeah.
So like you making fun of it doesn't do anything to me.
Yeah.
So, but I've never been a huge SNL fan anyway. I'm not one of the guys. One of the SNL boys. Not meeting them at the midnight to get the promo
let's
pick.
Move on.
So the movie begins, and it says a few years before the Lambert haunting.
And Micah was so hung up on a few years.
Well, I just thought it was kind of funny that they didn't specify how many years, because the series has been very meticulous.
And then I said, it probably doesn't matter.
And no, I know it doesn't. It just seemed odd to me. Because in the past, in the other movies, it'll be like 2 weeks later, a month later, 3 months later, 2 weeks before. And this
we're
one is
talking
just
about it too much.
Okay.
Okay, so a girl walks to a house that is vaguely familiar, which is Elise's house, who is the medium. From she was in both the previous two movies. And this girl is a young teenage girl, heard about Elise as a medium. She's trying to contact her mother, who's been dead for a year and a half. And so a lot of the times, I didn't know what the story was. So I was like, okay, this is just setting up someone's coming and who needs help, and she's not going to help him because we'll find out later. Wasn't sure if this girl was going to, if I needed to invest in this girl.
Totally. I thought that she was going to know our main character.
Or
something
Elise
like that.
was going to know the main character?
No. The girl who turns out to be our main character would be like, it's actually for my friend. And then the friend would be
something
or her
like
mom or her dad or something would be like the main character.
Right. But then, very quickly into the scene, it's like, man, this girl is really good. And it's like, yeah, it's a weird thing to notice probably, but also is it because in a lot of horror movies, which you get a lot of teenagers, which means you get a lot of inexperienced actors.
Yeah.
And she was amazing. Especially this is her strongest
I was blown
scene.
Away.
Yeah. So when Elise tells her she doesn't do that anymore, but then she, has compassion and lets her in, and they just start talking.
Yeah.
And you do see that the house, like all the windows are closed. It's very dark in the house. It just feels very depressing. The way it's lit and everything. Elise seems off, but it's like, what could she be off about? Because the Lambert thing hasn't happened yet. Like the conclusion to that. But then they start talking, the girl's acting is just getting better. And you're like, okay, please let her be in the rest of the movie. She's so good. The teenage girl. She starts talking about her mom and saying that she feels like her mom is around a lot and she just would really like to talk to her because she has questions for her that she was never able to ask. And so Elise, continuing to have compassion, she's like, I will try. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about that?
What do you mean exactly?
I mean, do you want to take it from there?
Did we finish up that scene?
Okay, so Elise tries contacting her mother.
I couldn't remember if she did or not.
Yeah, she tries, and she is pulled out of it suddenly, and basically is like, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah,
toodaloo, on with your day.
And they're doing a good job because right away, we know Elise, and it's like, what is off with her? I don't get it.
Yeah,
in a good way, you're thinking like it's causing you to think and. In a lot of ways, this is really a movie about Elise, which is very cool.
Yeah.
That she gets the time of day and that Leigh was able to go, yeah, that's who this movie should be about.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to like retread the Lamberts or something like that.
Even though this girl is in most of it, probably more of it.
Yeah.
Because after that, that scene ends and then we're really introduced to our main cast of characters, which is her dad. Her brother's not really part of it, but whatever. She has a brother. And you start to learn about her. She is just your kind of like, average teenage girl about to leave for college. So has a lot of hopes and dreams.
Yeah.
And, auditions for an acting school in New York. And doesn't do a great job. Get a James Wan cameo.
Yeah. He's like the college theater guy.
Yeah. Who's doing the auditions.
I like that. First of all, I think the sets in this movie are really good. Mm-hmm. I like their apartment.
Yes.
I like that whole building because what's cool about that building is it looks like, yeah, you'd live there, but it also doesn't look quite right.
Yeah, it looks old.
But it's very easy to be like, yeah, there's a weird like haunting thing going on here, but also like it's not when you watch a movie where there's like a crazy rundown thing and you're like, no one would ever live there.
Oh no.
Like this feels, it's just like kind of a little bit wrong.
Well, there's history.
Yeah.
In a place like that. Whether it's good or bad, we don't know yet.
Right.
But yeah, I would agree that some of the sets, especially with her audition, wherever that theater is, is amazing.
And they're at least kind of like just whetting our appetite on the scares. Like so far, we're a few minutes in and it's kind of like, he's taking his time. Mm-hmm. You see this weird man as she's
like waving at her. Yeah, like a silhouette of a man.
And then she goes outside and she's talking with her friend, and then she is crossing the street and she looks and sees the waving man. And
at this point you can see that he's in like a hospital gown.
Yeah.
Like that's about all the more the detail. And then one of the most brutal getting hit by a car things I've ever seen in a movie.
Very Upgrade-esque. Like that.
Like nuts.
Yeah, she just gets hit by a car.
And you see the whole thing, and you see when the car stops and her body drags across the street for several feet. Because that's what would happen. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, so she's dead.
I know, and I thought, so here's what I thought the movie was going to do. And I like where the movie went. I also would have liked this. It probably makes sense that they didn't do this because it happened so early. But I thought, okay, she's dead now. And
the movie is her in the afterlife.
It was going to be her in the afterlife and then her body like taken over. But I guess that's kind of the plot.
I kind of thought that's what was going to happen.
Yeah, I guess that's sort of the plot of both of the other movies as well. But I thought it was going to be kind of weird if she was dead and then she got brought back to life.
Yeah, but the whole thing about her being dead, like let's say she was dead, medically, it's like, so does this movie take place over seconds in real time?
Right.
Because I don't think that like she would be dead. Well, I guess the only way that would work, I guess what you're saying, is someone possesses her.
Right.
That makes sense.
Or if she is dead for like a while and she's like fighting for her body and then she like comes out of the casket at the end of the movie or something. That might be like way over the top.
Yeah, that would be like much more fantastical than what these movies already are to some degree.
But what I thought was cool, because I mean, we have seen this, but it felt like a fresh angle on it like she wasn't like astral projecting or anything like that, but it just seemed like, from what I could read into the movie, the man who can't breathe, is that what they call him? The man who can't breathe just wants a body, and he's trying to get her killed, is the impression, is the reading I got into
Yes,
it.
but here's the thing to note. So yes, however, Elise does discover that this man used to live in this building.
Right.
So there's that. And then also it is established early on that the teenage girl, Quinn, is actively trying to contact her mother. Because remember, at that first scene when Elise can't do it, she said, I can't do it, but do not contact your mom. Like, stop trying.
Yeah.
And that's why, because she kept trying to reach her mom, but she was never talking to her mom.
Uh-huh.
So that explains how you're seeing this thing more and more detailed the more she sees it, because it's as if she's inviting it without knowing it.
Yeah.
So that's why when she dies, that's like the first thing she sees is this thing that has been following her pretty much.
And it like scares her back to life.
Yes.
But I just thought it was kind of interesting that instead of, as in the previous movies, the evil spirits are just like trying to get in the bodies.
Yes.
But it really seemed like this guy was trying to kill her.
So that she can be his pet.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and so that was like a fun, fresh angle on that. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that is truly just like, that's really what you want from a sequel of something. And not only that, we've already seen 2 movies.
Right.
And like the second movie was still different than the first movie. So they did it. So to do it a third time, they could have just kind of done the first movie again.
Yeah.
But no, they kept the same concept of astral planes in the further.
Yeah.
But applied it to but it also can work if you die.
Yeah.
And come back to life.
And one thing I want to insert, because in the previous episode, we were talking about movies that, like the way Insidious 2 like recontextualizes the first movie by like them visiting and changing things. I had forgotten that in Back to the Future 2, they go back to the 50s and they Marty and I think Doc
Don't
as
they do
well.
It in the first movie.
Well, okay, so in the first movie they go to the 50s and they do the whole movie.
Yeah.
And then in the second movie they go to the future and the future's like totally messed up and they go back to the past where they went in the first movie.
Or were they following themselves?
And they're trying to make sure that they succeed in what they're doing. So I would guess that that's probably the first movie to do that trick. Mm-hmm. Is Back to the Future 2. Mm-hmm. I just want to point it out because there were probably people who are listening to Insidious 2 just yelling, it's Back to the Future 2 does what you're talking about. So anyway, like that and Endgame and Insidious 2, I feel like they all do that thing where they go back and they try to do things you've already seen in a different way or whatever. So anyway, just wanted to point that out.
Okay. I didn't think that. I wasn't thinking about those other things when we were talking about it.
What do you mean?
That's happened before because it feels so normal now that's in a story. Like it's like a time travel type thing. I know this isn't necessarily time travel, but that's a thing that happens a lot in time travel stories.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
It's just interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just always crazy when I think for me, it blows my mind when they go back to like a different movie and they're showing like different angles on things we've already seen. Cause I'm like, how did they, like on a technical level, I can't figure out how they would do it so perfectly.
Yeah. No, there's no way. It's like can't compute.
Yeah,
that's how I
feel. So it always just kind of blows my mind. But so we're at Elise's house, and she's sleeping with her husband's sweater, and that's like really sweet and touching.
It's sad. And so it's like, oh, okay, so she's depressed because her husband's dead.
Yeah,
and you're like, he probably died like not that long ago.
Right.
If this is how she's acting.
And she has this really great golden retriever named Warren.
Oren? You know, like from Parks and Rec. Oren.
I don't remember Oren.
He was the creepy guy that they were like, never talked to him for too long.
But great dog. He's got just the right amount of gray on him that you go, oh, he's seen some miles. And he seems to have his
own little psychic touch, which, I mean, a lot of dogs, that's kind of the thing.
No, I think that's cool that she kind of has, like, she's in touch with the dog in addition to, like if he senses something, she knows that something
is there. Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah. So, yeah, she has a vision in her... trying to go to sleep, has a vision, and wakes up, writes Quinn Brenner in her book.
Yeah. And then closes the book. That's kind of it for a little bit.
Yes.
And then we see that Quinn has, like she broke her hips, I think, and her knees and stuff.
Broke both of her legs.
Yeah, and she has these huge casts.
So she's bedridden. And it's like, what? You're taking away the use of mobility in a horror movie? Also, just kind of a
classic King move.
It is it is a classic King move because it is such a risk to take that away from a main character. Because usually that wouldn't even happen until the end of the story.
Yeah.
But no, we're starting there.
And if jump ahead for Dark Tower spoilers, but if you need another reason to read the Dark Tower books, the beginning of the second book out of 8, Roland gets his gun. He is a gunslinger, and he gets his like fingers eaten by these lobster monsters or ripped off, and so he can't use his good finger. And you're like, wait,
and he still kicks ass.
Well, when I read that, I was like, okay, surely this is a dream or whatever. And then
that's the book too, where he is in New York City.
Yeah,
just so people know, he is not from our dimension.
Yeah.
So he's
skip ahead if you don't want Dark Tower spoilers.
But remember he has that wound and they're getting like infected.
Yeah.
And he needs aspirin, but he doesn't even like, I think someone at one point says like, oh, let's get you some aspirin, and he doesn't even know what that is.
Yeah. And when he takes it, it's like morphine to him because his body's never had something like that before. But it was just crazy because I was like, okay, you're taking away like what he does. And I'm like, well, he's surely going to take this back. And then the whole series, he's always struggling with I think it's his right hand.
And then eventually throughout the series, he gets arthritis.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Oh, really I love that series so much.
And just fun fact for people with The Shining, because I know most people have seen The Shining, but maybe have not read the book, and maybe skip ahead of this, but also the book's been out for so long.
Right.
If you didn't know this, Stephen King breaks Wendy's back.
Oh, yeah.
In the book. He breaks her back. And Halloran, the chef, who comes back and dies in the movie, does not die in the book.
I think it's Halloran.
Sorry. It's kind of hard to say.
Yeah,
but
it's a weird one.
He gets his jaw dislocated from his face, but he doesn't die.
Right. Yeah.
Because he's using a croquet mallet and not
an axe.
And it's just like, surely everyone's going to die, right? Yeah. And Danny's fine.
Yep. Well, until you read Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm always going to be grateful for a Stephen King little divergent in the road. So there's this great scare that I wanted to make sure we talk about where she's in her bed and she knocks on the door where her kind of like maybe a future boyfriend, like crush who lives in the building is Hector. She knocks, she goes, and then she hears, and then I just didn't even consider that not being Hector. Mm-hmm. And then she texts him and she's like, oh my gosh, so you think I'm cute, you know. She doesn't say that, but
she says, did I wake you up? And he says, I'm not at home.
Yeah. And you're like, wait, what?
And she tries knocking a couple of times, nothing.
Yeah.
She even tries like a couple times, nothing.
Yeah. And then I think oh no, so that's a different part. But yeah, so I think she gets thrown out of bed in that scene.
Yeah.
Which not good. No. I don't like that.
It very early on in a movie about a haunting, you know that she's not experiencing it in her brain. And that's also part of because of the other movies that we know about.
Right.
But a lot of times in a horror movie, like let's say that this is just a different one, not even part of the series, being thrown out of her bed, that might happen, but she might wake up in bed.
Right.
This movie, no, she just gets thrown out of bed.
Yeah.
And
remember,
her legs are broken.
Yeah, and this like sprains her neck.
Yeah.
Remember? Well, I don't know if it sprains it, but she has to get like another thing.
Because throws her out of the bed. This thing is walking around her room. Goes to the door.
Yeah.
This is a very long scene. Goes to her door. It's like one shot. I'm looking over my shoulder
because he's creepy.
Closes her door. And at first, watching this, I thought he was going to leave her room. And I was like, okay, cool. She can take care of it. No, he stays in the room. And then...
go ahead.
I was just going to say he walks over to her laptop, closes the laptop.
And yet the fact that he can interact with her physical like things.
And then just suddenly disappear.
Oh, horrifying.
And that's because when she died, it attached itself to part of her. So it can do those things.
Oh, I didn't even put that together.
They said
That's
that
cool.
Really, that it has half of her. So it has like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. Therefore, she has 1 foot in, 1 foot out. That's why she can be affected. So closes her laptop and then goes over and just like lays on top of her.
Yeah. And we should note, because I remembered actually that's a little later in the movie.
Yeah, but we can talk about all the room scare stuff.
Yeah, but one thing, which of these three movies has been the scariest to you?
I think the night that we watched this movie, I think my anxiety level was already up a little bit. So this one felt like it, but I think definitely the first one.
Okay.
For me, the first one.
Because I feel like...
I'll say with the first one, a lot more things happen in it that really get under my skin.
Yeah.
This one was this one has jump scares, and we've talked about in the other movies they don't rely on that. And we even said too, we feel like the jump scares in this movie are earned. Yeah,
and I still can't quite figure out why I like them in this one, but I guess
I could do with less.
Yeah. I feel like the first movie I feel like it's objectively the scariest. But I think this movie scared me more than the other ones.
Yeah.
It was just...
If this one scared me more, then the other one disturbed me more.
Okay. I think this one, there was something about it, and it must be having Leigh behind the camera this time.
Yeah.
Where it just has like a little bit more of like a grotesque, like disturbing vibe to it than the James Wan movies. And I mean it by like 2 degrees. Not very much. But I think like the lipstick demon, he's really scary, but he's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like this guy, the man with that can't breathe, he's not cool. He's just scary and gross.
Yeah.
And
you can never really get a good look at him.
Yeah, and I kept waiting for the moment when I'd be like, oh yeah, he looks really cool. And then when you finally did get a look at him, I'm like, I don't want get him out of here.
I think part of it too is he was a person that existed at one time. So like
he wasn't like a
demon.
Yeah.
And then he also wasn't the woman in black who was a man that dressed up like that.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, this movie kind of got under my skin a little bit more because Insidious 1 and 2 just were like, again, I keep saying poltergeist, but it had that same feeling of like, oh, this is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Like it's scary, but I'm loving this. Keep it coming. And this one was a little bit more like,
yeah.
And it did have a moment where I went, ah!
When?
It was the ledge scene.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about, but before, okay. Dad goes upstairs because...
Well, wait. We should vamp up to that.
Okay.
Because, so they're to cover the rest of the bedroom parts, which is peppered throughout the movie. But another time she is, so after she gets thrown out of her bed, all that happens. She, her dad puts her on the couch out in the living room. So not in her room anymore.
Yeah.
Great. Because that seems to be where the bad stuff is happening. Plus, remember when she came home from the hospital, the old woman in the wheelchair told her that there is a man that has been waiting in her room.
Right.
Always
not good.
Scary. The classic old woman with Alzheimer's who you'd think just doesn't know what she's talking about, but you're like, pay attention to her because she knows what she's talking about.
Yes, yeah. We've seen enough horror movies to know.
Yeah. So she is now on the couch. She still scared, and then suddenly she is upstairs in the apartment upstairs. And at this point, this is another moment where I'm not sure if this is actually happening or not.
Yeah.
But she gets thrown out of her wheelchair again.
Yeah.
And then
not good.
Yeah. And something walks out of the room. It does not have hands or feet or a face. I think that's supposed to be her.
It is, yeah.
Because later on, it's her with a little bit more features.
Mm-hmm.
Don't really care for that kind of scare stuff. Honestly, it doesn't really scare me, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Like in movies, when they always put it in the trailers too, and I don't know about this one, but if it's a horror movie and there's a trailer and there's like haunting stuff, they're always going to show the person crawling on all fours, whether or not their head's twisted the wrong way or their legs are all bent the wrong way. Why do they always show that in the trailers? That's supposed to be scary, but now I'm like desensitized to that type of
that's really interesting. Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't find it very scary in this movie.
I will say, though, I'm glad that this one had a purpose, because most of the time when I see that in a scary movie, it is purely just supposed to scare you.
Like, that's weird, huh?
Yeah, which is like, this is not how a body works. And it's like, yeah, you've done this in the last 10 movies I've seen.
So two things. I want to make sure I don't forget them. One, I do like it in this movie, and I know you just said you did.
Because they explain why.
But yeah, because it's like a portion of her like soul as she's turning into like leaving her body.
Yes.
And that's why like it doesn't have some of the features. So I like that.
That's an interesting representation of that.
Yeah. And then the other thing I want to note is that this guy that is plaguing her, there's a weird scene in Elise's reading room where she's following those black footsteps, and they stop at a wall, and then they just
start going
go
up
the wall. And that is a touch that is just like so. It's like you keep saying it's terrifying. It's not horrifying, right? Is that
because it's not. They're not relying on gore or anything. That is that becomes a jump scare moment.
Yeah, it does.
But you feel dread.
Well, and earlier in the movie, I don't know if you caught this, but when the dad goes up into the apartment with the landlord to check it out, you look at the steps, and he looks under the bed, and they are the same distance apart, but they're under the bed, implying that he
I didn't really notice that.
Walked through the bed.
Yeah,
and I was just like,
my brain didn't put that together.
Mine was like, oh, what? And later in the movie, when they're back up in there, when she's out of the wheelchair and the dad comes in, the steps go up the wall and out the window.
Uh-huh.
And it's just like, that is such a great touch. And the reason I also wanted to highlight it is it's a lot of the stuff like an Invisible Man. There's so many of those little things that just unsettle you. Mm-hmm. You know, like that scene, like I think a lesser director would have made Invisible Man a much showier movie, and it would have been much worse. Yeah, because like that whole scene when she's at her friend's house, and then she leaves the room while she's cooking breakfast, and then the gas just turns on higher.
Yeah,
it's so simple.
And in that movie, he has so many wide shots because he knows that there is an invisible man walking around somewhere. And sometimes the camera would just switch from her to the hallway as if switching to a different perspective to focus on another character. But there's no one there because he is invisible. But he is not forgetting that there is another character, even though you can't see it. So when he does a wide shot in that movie, my eyes are just like bugging out. Like looking everywhere.
And it's cool because they're framing it to where it's like that's where you would see another person.
As if they're framing it because I think a lesser director.
It's the best movie of the year.
A lesser director would frame it in such a way that it's like, this is invisible. Can't you see what he's doing? But in the movie like that, they're framing it in such a way that as if he wasn't invisible, like he was just there.
So do you think I thought about this when we were watching it? Do you think they just framed him like that, or do you think they had like the actor stand there and then they like CGI'd him out? Or do you think that that's a dumb thought I'm having?
I don't know enough about that because in my head, I think a lot of the times I feel like in movies where I'm like, oh no, they totally didn't do that. That would take so much time. And then I find out that they did it.
Right.
So maybe they did do it.
I'm just curious if that would make, I'm sure with the acting, no, but I guess lining up shots, they probably had someone stand there.
They probably had to stand in because why would the actor need to be there?
Yeah. But I just wondered if it would help them, like the cinematographer, like give it that extra.
That probably just depends on the cinematographer on what they would prefer.
The more I'm discussing it, the more I'm like, maybe I should cut this out of the episode because I'm losing all my credibility. But let's talk about the scariest.
So continue with the window scene.
Yes. So the dad, he sees the man, and the man runs out and into this other room, and the dad chases him, and it's great because it's one shot. The camera follows his head because he sees that the window is broken, and he looks out, and the camera goes above his head, and you see his point of view, and you see that
a body on
the ground. So like the demon guy's down there, no big deal. And then the camera comes back, and then Quinn looks over. It's still one shot, and the camera follows her over, and he is right there. And I think that is an earned jump scare because it's just not out of nowhere. You saw that he was on the ground, and your mind was at ease, and you were like, there isn't a possibility that he would be anywhere else.
Also,
I thought he was just not going to be there.
No. And I also think it's cool because that it popped up for her because it wants her. It doesn't want her dad. And it doesn't need to get her dad out of the picture. It needs to get her out of the picture by killing herself later on.
That was a moment where I actually went, oh!
Yeah, that was scary.
So scary.
So eventually, they get Elise back. Well, the dad goes to Elise, explains everything.
By now, the old lady from Better Call Saul has passed away.
Yes. So the dad goes to Elise because he knows that the daughter had gone there. So it's like, I mean, she's a medium. I'm this at a loss now, because he's the character that doesn't believe. And that's when we learned that her husband took his own life a year ago. And that's what she has been going through, that depression. And she also explains that, there's, in the afterlife, there's light and dark.
Yeah.
And I've been looking for my husband, and I looked for him in the dark. And when I went there, a parasite, a woman, attached herself to me, or like came to me and told me that she was going to kill me over and over and over again, and says that, like, basically, I will be the person that kills you.
Yeah.
I will be the reason why you die whenever you do it. And that also explains why Elise has not been able to do her practice because of fear of this woman.
What did you think about this tie-in? Because they're talking about the woman in white who does kill her in the end of the first movie.
Black.
Or yes, yeah.
Kind of the same thing. But I loved it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think at first I was a little like, part of me wanted to be like, again, can't we just like forget about it already?
Right.
But no, because that is the person who kills her. So it has to be that person. Even if it was like, if they decided to, like, she said it was this woman, said it was going to kill me, and then maybe later on in the movie she defeats that thing. Maybe. Yeah. And it's like, sure, you could do that, but because of our history that we know, I think it's more interesting that is the thing that does it.
And I want to point out something you said. So the movie begins, you pause it, and you go, I have a problem with this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And you go,
I didn't give this movie a chance. We were 2 seconds in.
But you were it was conversational. You weren't like accusing the movie. There was no part of us that didn't want to like this movie. But you were like, it's called Chapter 3, but this happens before. And then we were discussing that, and I was like, yeah, I'm kind of confused about that too. Like, the titling is a little odd. Maybe it should have just been called Insidious Into the Further, which was the production name of this movie. Or something like that. Like a colon, like Star Wars, it's not an episode, that kind of an idea. But then I said, I was like, yeah, but sometimes in books, you go back and then it illuminates the story further. And since we know Specs and Tucker are in this movie, maybe it will work.
Yeah.
And then we get to the movie, and then especially with this woman in black thing, I think it does make sense that this is called Chapter 3, because it does kind of illuminate the other 2 movies as well, and it does kind of tie a little bow on those 3 movies.
Yeah.
And it makes me think that The Last Key maybe doesn't have any of these people in it. The Insidious 4, and it is just like Insidious, a Star Wars story. This doesn't have to do with the other ones.
The only thing that has to do with it is astral planes and the further.
Right. So I'll be real curious about that. Although I think the Elise is in all of them, I think, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I mean, I hope.
Yeah,
she's the best.
That's really interesting, though.
Yeah. So yeah, Elise, has all these things going on, and then where are we? She has a vision of her death. You said that.
And she will not help.
Yeah.
So that's when he goes to his son. And earlier in the movie, when we were introduced to the son, he's watching paranormal videos on his computer.
Oh, I didn't track that.
So we're at this point in the movie, back to the son on his computer watching paranormal videos showing his dad, Specs and Tucker.
Yeah.
And saying like, these guys are legit. Let's hire them. So they do.
And I think
it's kind of crazy to me that they wait this long for the movie to bring them back.
It's like the same amount of time they waited in the first one, which is kind of weird.
And I think that's why this is all just so well written, because they don't need, like, I don't know, it's just not relying on the fan service.
Yeah. I think this movie it gets close, but it doesn't cross over. Except for the very, very end.
Very campy, but I think it's cute.
But it like works.
Yeah.
It works. It's like, Captain America and Iron Man being like, let's go have a beer. And you're like, okay.
It's shawarma.
But I kind of feel good. Well, I was making it my own.
Yeah, but I was making a joke.
Okay, and you're in trouble. Specs and Tucker show up. Elise meets with Carl from the second movie, which is cool to see him again. And he's like, this is your gift. You got to help these people. Like, you need to help people. That's what you do.
And I like how we put it where he said that when there's someone is hurting another person, we have the police to go to. When something is hurting another person that we can't see, basically is what he says.
Yeah.
People have to come to us. And it's like, I like that a lot.
Yeah.
That was a good perspective.
That's cool.
Because she said, like, do we actually help people? Which I think is also an interesting thing to ask.
Yeah. And I love, so then the next sequence, she comes in, there's some funny business with like Tucker and Specs, and I'm into that stuff.
I like that she just shows up too.
Yeah, and she just kind of starts telling them what to do, and you're like, oh, cool.
Like, what's your strength? Great, we'll use it.
Yeah, and then they do like they're calling out into the further, and she goes into the further. The old woman. And I think this is really cool because in the other movies, she's just been the one that's helped, but she hasn't been the one that's able to like fully turn the key on the plot.
Yeah.
She puts the key in, but like Josh Lambert has to turn it.
We forgot to say that she does go into the further at before this time.
And that's when she has the vision of her death.
Sorry. Yeah.
We actually didn't mention it. We kind of did. Doesn't matter. So she goes into the further. And it's just cool because she has this moment where she sees her husband. And then her husband's like, you should stay with me. And he's like, but you just need to kill yourself and come live with me. And he like hands her scissors. And then she's like, my husband would never ask me to do that. And she kills him? Or he just turns into...
She gets him with the butchers. The barber thing. I do want to mention, though, the first time she goes into the further in this movie, it is really interesting and important that... she's walking through the hallway. She sees some people who used to live in this building. One of the people was a woman who killed herself because of this thing that has attached itself to Quinn. That's interesting. Mm-hmm. But eventually she is in the further full on, and she is taken to the house where she dies in the first movie. And I was like, that's nuts.
Right.
That's where she ends up. She doesn't even know why she's there right now.
Right.
And then that the woman in black gets her, and so then we're at this moment because of Carl reminding her that you were alive, therefore you're stronger.
Yeah, and she does have that moment where she the woman in black attacks her again.
Yeah.
And she like pushes her back, and then she's like, I'm going to take care, like I'm going to go get this girl and I'm going to do it. And it's cool seeing her doing that rather than someone else. Like I said, turning the key on the plot. Yeah. And then she gets her, she's bringing her back, and then...
Well, she has to get her, at this point, she is still basically faceless, Quinn, in the further.
Yeah.
And doesn't really have hands yet either.
Uh-huh.
But, Elise grabs her, they run back up to their apartment, which is where her body is. Elise gets back into her body, but Quinn doesn't get back yet.
Yeah.
And we see, them them calling out to her like they did with Josh in the first movie, Patrick Wilson. But it just was so interesting. Like she is with this weird, the man who can't breathe guy, and he's like petting her.
Yeah.
And she's starting to grow hands because she's losing. But once they start calling out to her, that's when she, hears them. And then her mom shows up.
Yeah.
And helps her and gets her back into her body.
What's the deal with Lily's being dead? Dead mothers.
I don't know. It's
Lily
like
Potter?
Christopher Nolan always having a dead wife in his movies. So her mom helps. I really like that scene. It was very emotional.
Yeah, it was
when she's
a nice
back
scene.
and she's like, "Your mom's here right now." She says these things, blah blah blah.
And I thought
I'm not making it sound emotional.
Stephanie Scott's acting was crazy good and all that.
Oh yeah, it was amazing. Really liked that scene.
And then Elise goes home.
Yeah.
And when she's going to bed, well, she has the scene with Specs and Tucker where she's like, "We should go into business." It's a little over the top, but
she's like, "You guys
it.
should wear shirts and ties." Like okay, rolling my eyes, but that's cute.
Yeah, and then she goes to her home and she sees the sweater that she always sleeps with of her husband and then puts away in the morning.
Yep.
She sees it's on the bed, so she's like, "Oh my gosh, he communicated to me. Yep. It's gonna be okay."
Yeah,
and I can accept that he's gone now, which is really, really touching. And then, sort of out of nowhere, the lipstick demon shows up.
Well, did you see there was a man's face in the bathroom?
I didn't see that.
Yeah, so the dog starts barking at something in the bathroom, and the bathroom's no lights are on. So you're like, "Oh, okay, there's a spirit over there." End of the movie. This is kind of like the last movie ended. It's probably something horrific. Mm-hmm. And there was a man's face, and the face is eye level with the dog, Micah. And you didn't see it?
Oh, I saw that. Okay, yes, I did.
That was terrifying to me.
Yeah, that was
I
weird.
did not like that. And then it cuts to Elise, and then we see the lipstick demon, which is, I mean, I didn't like it because I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
But part of me was like, why did we need that?
Also, I think it sort of breaks the logic of the movie a little bit because that was plaguing the son.
Yes.
So I don't know why he would
I think
show
it's just
up.
a classic callback.
But for these movies that are pretty tightly written in terms of their chronology, it was a little okay, that's kind of sucks that you added that. Even though I wanted to see the lipstick demon more, it was come on, that was a bit of a okay,
yeah.
But all in all, I thought the movie was good.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's about time for people to kind of start reevaluating maybe this this past 20 years of horror and some of these movies that maybe are oh, that was just the teenage movie. Because nobody talks about Insidious. Well, we've talked about how people don't really talk about the series that much. But, I know when Insidious, the last chapter was coming out, I was like, oh, brother, another one of those movies? How many are there? 20? Who cares? And now I'm like, it's probably good.
Yeah.
I know that it's the lowest rated, but all of these movies are not that high rated.
Very consistent. And why do we need something to be rated R to consider watching it?
I meant the Metacritic.
No, I know,
score.
but I'm talking more in the other way of when you're gonna watch a horror movie. I think when you see that something's PG-13, you think it can't be that scary.
Yeah.
So it's if you do see something that's not a rating you expect, don't write it off.
Right.
Because it could still be pretty dang scary.
Right. It doesn't have to be directed by Ari Aster or the guy who did The Witch to be a legitimate horror movie. You know, it can be good horror
Which is
still.
Funny. I'm just curious where their careers will go. I think they're both really great directors.
Yeah.
But
especially Robert Eggleston, I think.
Eggers or something?
Eggers. Yeah, I think so.
Curious how long they'll last. I think they will last a while because they are really good and they make really artistic movies. But it is when I have kids and stuff, it's going to be sounding weird showing horror movies to my children. At the appropriate age, of course, and if I think they can handle it. But I would not be showing them their movies probably for a long time, if not ever.
I mean, that's because they're very mature.
But I guess the reason I say bring something like that up is what will age better.
Sure.
Is what I'm trying to say, I think.
Yeah. It's
that being said, like I said in the last episode, Hereditary is one of the scariest movies I've ever seen. We'll definitely never see it again.
Yeah.
But it is also one of the best scary movies I've ever seen.
It's just funny, it's you wonder how much just association goes on with movies. I know for me it does affect my opinion a lot, but like if you slapped A24 at the beginning of Insidious, would it be like, hipsters, for lack of a better term, all over like, oh yeah, I love the Insidious movies? Of course, it's an A24 movie.
Do A24 do the Robert Eggers movies?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
and
funny.
they do the Ari Aster movies too.
Yeah,
which are great movies.
Yeah.
But
I mean, now when I see a Blumhouse in front of something, I'm like, my interest is piqued.
Right. Yeah, the horror conversation is so interesting. This has been, like you said today, it's like a very nice palette change for our podcast. You know, doing martial arts before this, now horror. It's like, for me, both of those genres I'm not very well versed in, so I feel like I'm learning a lot and like watching a lot of different movies in both of those.
Yeah. And I feel like this is the first one in a long time that I'm not fatigued on yet.
No, it's been pretty interesting. And if the next one's bad, then it's like, okay, one of them's bad.
Yeah.
But we are 2 away from our next series, so we should announce it.
Okay.
First of all, tomorrow is our Halloween episode, so make sure you watch Mortal Engines, because what's more scary to a Hollywood producer than a failed film franchise? And then in 2 weeks, we start our new series, so rent it from the library, go wherever it is. We're starting dun 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 The Terminator. All 6 of those bad boys.
Ridley Scott.
Not Ridley Scott.
James Cameron. Ridley Scott did Alien.
Yep, it'll be. And we're doing Terminator, Terminator 2, Terminator 3, Terminator Salvation, Terminator Genesis, and Terminator Dark Fate.
And I just beg listeners, please just take the journey with us, because I know I will not have that much fun.
Well, I'm gonna have fun. We'll talk about it when we get there.
Yeah.
But so we're gonna get terminated. We will be back. We will be back.
Oh, okay.
You get it?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for listening, and go to patreon.com/Micah McCaw. Sign up for $3.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing. In 2 days, our new bracket starts, and it's fan pick. But if you're a patron, your vote counts as 2. It's going to be held on my Instagram, maybe yours too. Maybe we'll go back and forth. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
At out_of_Micah or at
JM_McCaw.
Yes. And it'll be a voting thing. There's 16 possible series. And when we finish Terminator, we're going to do whatever wins. So make sure and go there. It'll be on Instagram stories every single day for 15 or 16 days. And then, yes, go to patreon.com/Micah McCaw. Your vote's going to count as 2. Plus, if we get one more patron, we're going to release the Winnie the Pooh tapes. Come on.